I was finally able to get my hands on the GH5 Mark II, and here are my first impressions coming straight out of the box. If you're new here, my name is Caleb and I do freelance video with the Panasonic GH5. And thanks to LUMIX, I'm excited to test out and take a look at the GH5 Mark II. And according to my YouTube analytics, 80% of you watch my videos but have not hit that subscribe button. If you're part of that 80%, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Now, if you're a GH5 user, you've probably already seen a ton about the GH5 Mark II. It came out in the spring of 2021. I finally got my hands on it thanks to LUMIX. And this video is just a first impressions, pulling it right out of the box. This is not a review video. So this is basically just gonna be a talking head, kind of talking about the camera body and maybe some of the settings. But I will be having a review come out, which is put together by you, because a couple weeks ago I put out on Instagram and on the YouTube community page, I asked, what are some things that you want to know about the GH5 Mark II? So I will be answering the best I can those questions about the GH5 Mark II. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that review video about the GH5 Mark II put together by you. But if you happen to miss that Instagram post and that YouTube community post, make sure you comment your questions about the GH5 II down in the comments here. Now, like I said, this is a first impressions video. This is not a review. So let's just take some time and just talk about some of these things that I noticed right out of the box compared to using the GH5. And we'll just start with the overall camera body. Now, if you're familiar with using a GH5, using the GH5 Mark II, holding it in your hand, it's gonna feel pretty much exactly the same as using the first generation GH5. I think most of the changes actually happen in the guts of the camera, but the overall feel feels pretty much exactly like the first generation GH5. There are a few different things, like you notice a few different like red accents, but if you have the GH5S, you're probably already familiar with that, which is not that big of a deal. They're just trying to kind of make it consistent with the rest of the line. And one of the things I noticed right away is that they didn't get rid of the function buttons, but they kind of changed the function buttons. So like this function right up top here is now like a color profile button. Now all these buttons you can still, customize, and just by holding them down, you can go into the menu and make that button really whatever you want to make it. What was the function 3 button is now the Q button. Another thing I noticed right off the bat is that the dial goes up to a custom 4. What you're actually able to do is, I think, have up to like 10 customizations on the GH5 Mark II, which if you really rely on those custom settings and, kind of dialing in the different shoot settings and, variable frame rate or whatever you use those for, having all of those different customizations up on the dial will really save you a lot of time. Now, another major difference that you're gonna notice right away is actually the new style battery. So you can still use the old batteries in the GH5 Mark II, but this battery right here is gonna allow you to get a little bit longer life, a little bit longer battery life. And one of the great features with the GH5 Mark II is actually the USB-C charging port. So you'll be able to charge the GH5 Mark II right through this USB-C port. And now that newer battery does not fit in the old battery charger. So you will have to get a new battery charger or just charge it through that USB-C port. Now the actual screen on the camera is just a little bit smaller than the original GH5, but it is a brighter screen, so shooting in daylight shouldn't be as big of an issue. Now another thing with the GH5 Mark II is that you're able to live stream directly from the camera without any capture cards. So that is one of the tests that I'll probably be running to see how, smooth that would be. Okay, so that's a little bit about the body of the GH5 Mark II. Now let's get into the guts of the camera. And the big thing is that the GH5 Mark II has a new processor. So the GH5 is on an older processor, and some of the updates that are coming out, you're not able to update with the GH5. But I think the reason they made the GH5 Mark II is for those updates. Now, for some reason, you're still not getting like the raw output over HDMI yet, but maybe that is something that's coming. But one of the big updates, like for some of the other Micro Four Thirds cameras from LUMIX, is that the autofocus is supposed to be better. So that's one of the things that I got a lot of questions about, and one of the things that I will be testing in the review video. Now, the actual sensor is not different from the GH5, but it does now have like a coating on it to kind of cut down on glare and things like that. I don't know if it's like a nano coating or something like that, but it's supposed to have a special kind of coating on there, but the sensor actually isn't different, but the processor is different. Now, one of the things that you might like with the GH5 Mark II is that it does come with the Vlog L and HLG profile, which you don't have to purchase separately some key card that comes in the mail to upload to your GH5. So that feature right there might be worth the upgrade, because that's $100 just to get that key to put Vlog L on your GH5, which I just think is ridiculous by LUMIX. But the GH5 Mark II does come with the Vlog L and HLG profiles built in to the camera. No purchasing a separate key. It does also have the Cine D2 like on the LUMIX S5. So it is an updated Cine like D profile, which you may or may not like. Now on the review, I'm gonna get into a little bit more detail on some of the shoot settings and color profiles and all that, but it does have the dual IS, and the IBIS is actually a 6.5, 6 1/3, I think 6.5 stops compared to the GH5, which is actually 5 stops. So it actually should have a better IBIS than the original GH5. Now, I don't know if you've used the LUMIX S5 at all, but this screen really reminds me of using the LUMIX S5. Now, one of the things when you hit this Q button, it kind of brings up some of those different settings that you can shuffle through and, you know, kind of choose whichever one that you want. If you want to change your shoot settings or change your color profile, you can go in there and make those changes right from that screen right there without having to go into the actual menu. Now, one of the things I really like about this is you're going to be able to go in here and actually shoot internal Cinema 4K 60 frames per second. It's 420 10-bit, but it is a long GOP. You also have Cinema 4K 60 frames at 8-bit, but I really like having that internal option, as well as a 4K 60 frames per second 420 10-bit. And that's gonna be all internal. So you're not gonna have to have like a Ninja 5 or anything like that to record 4K 60 frames per second at 10-bit. Now, like I said, it is 420, it's not 422, but you're still gonna have some really good control over that color if you're shooting in Vlog or HLG. So it's just nice having that option internally on the GH5 Mark II. Now, the menu really does look very similar to what the GH5 or the LUMIX S5 would have. Probably the LUMIX G9. I'm not totally familiar with the G9, but I'm sure it would be very similar. Now, it looks like it's gonna have a lot of the same type of options that the GH5 has, but let's look. Oh, look at this. The sound level adjustments, you can actually take down to -18. You can actually go down to -18 on the decibel level, which on the GH5 is what? -12. So it actually has, looks like probably a better preamp in here. A couple of the other things which I might put together, you know, like another GH5 Mark II cinematic settings video, but it still has some of those great features like the waveform, vector scope, focus peaking. You're also gonna have a Vlog L view assist, HLG view assist. It looks like the GH5 Mark II has all of the great features of the GH5, as well as some additions like that -18 decibel level on the sound recording. But I'm excited to test this out more, take it out, and put that review video together. Thank you, LUMIX, for sending me the GH5 Mark II. Thank you for your input, your questions, and things that you want to find out about the GH5 Mark II. I should have the GH5 Mark II review video out fairly soon, so if you are not subscribed, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that review video. Well, that's all I have for this video. If you have time, it'd be awesome if you stick around, maybe watch one of these videos that's popping up on your screen right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.